far, it seems we have seen a dearth of cyber attacks from Russian would-be attackers since the war has started. Would you agree, and why is that?
Well, thank you, Emily, for having me on. I think saying there's a dearth of attacks might be taking it a little bit far. There have been some quite important hacks. There was the hack of the Viasat satellite network, which, according to the Ukrainian cybersecurity agency, caused some quite serious disruption to communications. But that's the sort of thing we've seen from Russia before against Ukraine since hostilities started, not on February 24, but in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea. And I think a lot of people would have expected a serious intensification of that, and that hasn't happened yet. Why might that be? Well, it may be that the Russian cyber hackers weren't ready, like a lot of the Russian forces. Maybe they weren't told. And unlike some military operations, say flying a bombing squad over a city, a sophisticated hack of a power grid of internet infrastructure actually takes a very long time to plan. It takes a lot of time, skill, resources, and a bit of luck. You have to remain undetected. So maybe they weren't ready. Also, frankly, when you're in a state of full-scale war, blowing something up is easier for the invader than doing a sophisticated cyber attack. So there are all sorts of reasons, but I think the sort of cyber war that we feared hasn't happened yet, but we're still in this crisis. And I think the president was right to sound the alarm the other night about what might happen, because we need to be prepared.
So how serious then would you say the threat is of Russian cyber attacks, given so many of their resources have been focused on this physical invasion thus far? And if these cyber attacks do happen, how damaging could they be?
So it depends on your starting point. If you subscribe to a kind of Hollywood version of cyber war where everything goes off at once and normal life is completely blown apart, I don't think that's realistic. That's very hard to do, and it's extremely hard to do at scale. And obviously, if you're in Ukraine, you're in fear of your life, your way of life, the survival of the country. And so they've got worse things to worry about than computer hackers, although they do have to try to defend their critical networks. But if you're looking at the risk to the West, we spoke earlier a little bit about the sort of ransomware attacks and the criminal attacks. A lot of those happen out of Russia, and Russia has got both criminals and state workers who are very, very good at hacking. And maybe they don't need to do the elite level attack on a power grid or something to cause us real difficulties. Last year, Russian criminals attacked Colonial Pipeline's email systems, and that caused the company to shut down the pipeline, causing fuel shortages. Another bunch of Russian criminals who've pledged support for President Putin and his invasion last year attacked the Irish healthcare system and caused huge delays to cancer operations, antenatal services, and so forth. So where there's attacks to happen, I think there's a soft underbelly of a way of life that could be disrupted, not directly sort of fatal like a military operation, but it could be seriously disruptive. And that's why I think the authorities are right to sound the alarm.
What kind of counterattacks are being waged by the United States and others around the world at this moment?
Well, they don't say, so it's hard to know. And occasionally some operations get declassified. But I don't think we should think that we have some magic invisible weapon that can force Putin to change his mind. Otherwise, we would have used it by now. And I think if you look at it, so let's take that operation against Irish healthcare, which was done by criminals for money. Will the United States or its allies, who have been demanding that Russia ceases hostile cyber action against critical infrastructure, would we disrupt the civilian healthcare system in Russia? Now, it's technically possible, but are we going to do things to non-competent Russian civilians that we're not prepared to do in the physical world? Some of the hacktivists that are working on behalf of the Ukrainians have been doing things like disrupting a bit of media, and that has some tactical effect, but it's hard to see what strategic effect we have. I think there's an asymmetry here. We've got these highly digitized, vulnerable societies that are more digitally advanced than most of Russian civilian life. So it's not really a case of fighting cyber with cyber. The sanctions, the diplomatic pressure, the arming the Ukrainians, those are our ways of pushing back, probably more than using cyber capabilities.
Meantime, we are getting some headlines on the Lapsus, the group that we believe hacked Okta earlier this year, that a teenager is suspected by cyber researchers of being the mastermind behind this operation, a teenager who still lives with his mom in England. What's your take on what happened with Okta quickly, and if it has any ties to the chaos going on in cyberspace as a result of the war?
Well, we're moving from the fog of war to the chaos of the Lapsus attack, and who knows, there's no evidence that I've seen of any connection to the war, so let's not jump to conclusions. Actually, it's a reminder that people can cause chaos and mayhem on the internet, even if they're not connected to politically motivated objectives, even if some of their methods are laughable. So it's a critical reminder of our vulnerabilities and the need to clean up our digital environment.